Hello and welcome to the NewsX-Sunday Guardian Roundtable. As we bid goodbye to 2016, we shall be debating today whether this has been the year that has seen the rise of the right wing. What with the win of Donald Trump, and of course with Brexit, and elsewhere in Europe with Austria, Hungary, and also in France. Or I'm wondering whether we should call this the year that has seen the death of the liberal left. For in the Middle East, we've also seen the rise of Arab nationalism. And to discuss all this and also its impact on India, which way has our country turned in the past year? Joining me on the roundtable, there is Manish Tewari, Congress spokesperson. There is Rajeev Chandrasekhar, he's the Rajya Sabha MP from the NDA, and Dr. Subramanian Swamy, Rajya Sabha MP and BJP leader. Well, Manish, you've seen the global right turn really, but how is it impacting India? Because, you know, in India also we have the BJP and Prime Minister Modi in power.
Well, you're absolutely correct that there has been a rise of the right all across the world. Its most virulent manifestation is Europe, where you've seen the exit of Britain from the European Union. Even in France and other parts of Europe, you see the rise of the right. Donald Trump's victory, despite all the predictions to the contrary, actually underscores it. And in India, in fact, it happened earlier. The fact is that Prime Minister Modi and the BJP won the elections in 2014, much before all this started unfolding in Europe and in the United States of America. The reasons may be different. The reasons in each geographical location may depend upon topical circumstances. But yes, this is a challenge which the left liberal or progressive forces need to recognize, and they need to be able to respond to it in a certain manner.
Dr. Swamy?
Well, I think, he has said one part of it, and it's correct also. The more important part is that the left had become much too sophisticated for the masses. And the nuances and in terms of its coverage, and people began to yearn for straight talk. And with this media, splurge that is taking place of the social media, etc., people use the American phrase is tell us like it is. And therefore, the blunt speakers, like for example Trump, and by the way, not all the projections were that Trump would lose. I was one of the few, and won a few bets also on that, who said that Trump would win. Now, that's one aspect, that the way you spoke, the so-called political correctness which the left imposed, people began getting fed up, and they wanted somebody else to tell them something which is straight and which something related to their reality. The second thing is this terror has made macho speaking also a very popular issue, and the left was not articulating that at all. And so both these combinations, in India of course I would say there is a growing feeling of a Hindu identity, and it's not articulated, but we benefited by that because our vote went up from 21% to 31% when people rose above the caste. For us, Hindutva means people voting as Hindus, which means rising above the caste. So, as he says, there are contextual situations which have to be taken into account. But broadly speaking, the left idiom became out of date. People in this modern world of social media and all wanted to be told bluntly, straight, what they can do, cannot do. And the third is terrorism. Made the room possible for macho speaking, which the right was doing.
Rajeev, your first thoughts on this?
No, so I have a problem with the characterization of right, because I don't know in what context are we talking about right. Is it right-wing economics? Is it right-wing identity politics? Is it right-wing approach towards law and order and terrorism? So we have to be careful that we don't put all of it in one bucket and say India's right-wing move is the same as the American right-wing move, as the same as the UK right-wing move. But there is one common theme that I see as I travel around the world and in India, which is that there is a growing realization of a certain kind of national identity politics. The Americans are saying, we want America great again. The English are saying, or Britain is saying, we don't want to lose our national identity in this little, soup of European Union. So I think clearly, whether you disagree on or agree on the national right-wing economics or the hard approach to terror, there is a growing pushback from the old humanitarian free immigration model to more and more of a conscious deliberation of national identity. Who are we as Americans? Who are we as Indians? Who are we as British? And that I don't think is particularly a bad thing. I think because years and years of political correctness have created a very, very dangerous situation in Europe, and it is creating social friction. I'm not anti-immigration, but I think there is a clear pushback to decades of this left liberal humanitarian approach towards growing societies and growing countries to something that says this is our national identity and we want to preserve that culture and heritage, and we'll see what else comes with that.
See, in this scenario, Manish, is the Congress worried? Because the BJP, whatever, they have a very strong sense, whether they call it Hindutva, Hinduism, they have a strong sense of national identity. Congress is still walking this, the center line.
Well, I think let's forget the Congress and the BJP for a while, because for the first time you are having something which is far more substantive in terms of a discussion than the usual tutu meme which goes on. I just wanted to take Rajeev's point. You see, the lurch to the right is both social, it's economic, and it is political. So therefore, it's not as if there is only a right-wing economic orientation. There's been a fundamental shift of the axis to the right, and if people do not acknowledge it, they live in denial. That's number one. And number two, there is this very interesting contradiction. So on one hand, you have sovereign boundaries or Westphalian boundaries getting erased by the Facebook lands, by the Twitter lands of the world. Today there is talk of actually even virtual sovereignty, countries existing in the virtual space. And then you have the hardening of attitudes towards the Westphalian construct, the so-called national identity, which I think Britain's exit from the European Union exemplified it the most. So there is a very interesting contradiction that while technology is blurring those barriers, there seems to be a human instinct, to hold on to what they feel possibly more secure with. And this contradiction, as it plays out over the next decade or so, will be something very interesting to watch.
Yeah, but see, he's substantially right. But the economic aspect, it's a very peculiar situation. Both right and left today are more or less for market economy. Now, but the left is for globalization and the right is for protectionism. I don't mean communists when I say left. I mean the kind of people you see in
his party.
in Delhi. No, yes, in Delhi, in his party, the National Advisory Council or something you had, full of people who are left, and there's all these questions of Manrega and so on, and the attitude towards minorities. All these were the ones really that distinguish. I think it's much more, the right movement is much more a social cultural thing than an economic thing.
But in the economics part, Rajeev, the social, the welfare state concept is also something that is adopted by the right, isn't it? Or maybe in a more
so that is the point I was making. And I agree with both my friends that the move to the right is essentially political, social and cultural and not economic.
Right.
And because the welfare state under, for example, the so-called right government that you call Prime Minister Modi has actually expanded. It has not contracted with Jan Dhan Yojana and all of that.
Okay.
So the real move is triggered by the issue of identity. And here I would disagree with Manish. Actually, technology is helping amplify this move to identity in a sense realization. It is easier for people all across the world to come on Facebook or come on a social media platform and say this is our identity, and suddenly you will have 10 million people of the same identity talking the same language. Now in a flash you can have, let's say, all Americans who believe that America needs to be more isolationist, more anti-immigration, can just come together on a platform and say this is what we want. Similarly for in India, if a certain community, caste or an identity For example, the national anthem debate. You will have a whole bunch of people coming in and saying we want the national anthem to be sung. And it is really then the onus is on the left liberal to say no, we don't want this imposed on us. So I think technology has in a sense amplified this and has helped the rise of the right and has helped this transformation away from the left liberal discourse to what we are seeing today in US, in Britain and in India.
I may just add something. See, you asked him about the Congress problem. Congress so far strategy was very useful to them so far. That is, divide the Hindus and unite the minorities. Now this identity thing which he correctly identified has sort of started consolidating the Hindus. And minorities, whether
Dividing the minorities.
Shias have been divided up. This time, Bohras, Khojas, we managed to divide their vote. Women is another factor, which is we find increasingly support from Muslim women. So they have to address this strategy. They don't have to come as far as us to meet that, but they at least should go where Patel was or Morarji Desai was. Who were known as strong Hindus, and yet, they could articulate their own Congress ideology. Unless they do that, if you have a foreign outlook of your party, and, people all in suit boot,
He's calling yours the suit boot Sarkar.
No, he can call suit boot Sarkar. It applies to only one individual in our party.
There I would like to respectfully disagree with Dr. Swamy. See, the Congress never divided the Hindu society. If the Hindu society was divided by anybody in terms of an extreme internal intrinsic churning, it was by Vishwanath Pratap Singh. It was Mandal which actually...
He's a congressman.
Which may have been a congressman, but when he did it with the support of the BJP and the communists. So therefore, the National Front government had nothing to do with the Congress party. It had everything to do with you or your current avatar and the left. So therefore, the big churn which stratified Hindu society into caste actually was done by Prime Minister VP Singh and not the Congress party. Number two, Dr. Swamy is right. There is a certain idea of India which the Congress party has. And that idea of India is that democracy is not about only listening to the majority. But democracy is also about giving the minority an equal space, a minority point of view also an equal space. Unfortunately, what has happened, and there, I take what Rajeev is saying, that the mobilization aspect of the social media tools has now allowed the dominant majority voice to completely drown out the minority voices. Now, the difficulty with that is that in a country as heterogeneous as India, if you drown out the minority voice, you push them into a corner, and from alienation you go to radicalization and you go to extremism. One of its biggest manifestations is unfortunately in Kashmir. For the life of me, nobody has been able to explain to me, why is Burhan Wani the poster boy of the young Kashmiri? Why isn't that boy who came second in the civil service exam? So therefore, you see, here lies the danger of identity politics in a heterogeneous country like India, that if the minorities actually get pushed to the wall, rather than being included into the mainstream, you have a huge problem. And if you look at sheer numbers, you see, minority numbers in India are not really minuscule numbers. They may be characterized as a minority, but they're large numbers, and therefore I think we need to be cognizant of that reality.
I think here Manish is making a mistake. I think this is not a zero-sum game where listening to the majority and accepting that the majority is in majority automatically implies that the minority is ignored. That is not how I see it being played out. I think for several years and decades, in the anxiety to, in a sense, not alienate the minority, the majority was alienated and wasn't heard as much. And that clock has now turned full circle, comes to a situation where the majority, whether it's in India, whether it's in Britain, whether it's in the US, is saying, that's all fine, but we are the majority and we want to be heard, and we want to also have a voice in how this narrative moves forward. that doesn't automatically imply that everybody who's a minority is going to go take up arms and become radicalized. That is the narrative, unfortunately, that has been in play for too long, which is to scare the hell out of everybody, that if you accept that there is a majority national identity of a nation, suddenly everybody else is going to get hurt, upset, and take to arms. That is not what a mature democracy is about. That America has shown that, Britain is showing that, and France will show that soon, which is that there is a core identity of a nation that cannot be ignored. That is the majority identity, or whatever you want to call it. And the other part of it is a plus add-on. But to assume that the minority identity has to be treated with such kid gloves that the majority will constantly feel ostracized, ignored, is a recipe that has created this move to the right.
Well, before Dr. Swamy comes in, may I just, Dr. Swamy, for a second? You know, the fact is that I would like to respectfully disagree with this conceptually, because when you go back to the partition of India, that is where the idea of India was founded. So therefore, you created an Islamic Pakistan and you created a secular state of India where there was no majority or minority identity. There was only an Indian identity. Now, if after 67 years you are going to superimpose a Hindu identity onto that idea of India, I think you are creating a problem.
No, I didn't say Hindu identity. I said there is a national identity. I think people are saying a national identity of a nation like India will obviously be driven by what the nation consists of.
Well, now you're being politically correct.
No. I'm being factually correct.
Okay, much to my surprise, we have to take a break. But stay with us. This is a fascinating conversation to be a part of after a short break. Welcome back to the NewsX-Sunday Guardian Roundtable. We are here discussing the right turn taken by the world in this year and also the impact in India and also the idea of India, I think, which is where Dr. Swamy wanted to come in.
Well, I'll start with his comment that the partition created a Muslim Pakistan and a secular India. Well, if you read, I urge him to go back and read the parliamentary debate in the House of Commons when they're debating the Indian Independence Act. They said our intention is to create a Muslim Pakistan, Muslim governed Pakistan and a Hindu governed India. And it is our Congress party leaders of that time who said no, we will not ask anyone to leave. Although Ambedkar was in favor of a population exchange. And anyway, it couldn't be debated because Mountbatten advanced the date of independence to August 47 instead of June 48. Now, secondly, please don't use the word minorities to describe everybody, because I think at the core of your mind is that minority means Muslim. Parsis are a minority, the smallest minority. They are the ones who should be most afraid of being destroyed. They are essentially a part of our society. Okay, the Jews very small, no problem. Jains, Buddhists, Sikhs now, and Syrian Christians definitely, and except these missionary targeted Christians, all of them have no problem. Furthermore, as far as the Hindu right is concerned, we have told the Muslim population that you are also part of us, because your DNA is the same as us. It's the mullahs who say no, that's not true, we come from Arab. The problem with the Muslim community is its identity with the Arab invaders. That is where the problem is.
You know, again, there is a fundamental conceptual disagreement that I have with Dr. Swamy. You see, when you look at minorities in India constitutionally are counted state-wise. For example, I am a Hindu, but I am a minority in Punjab. And the Hindus electorally in Punjab behave in the same manner as minorities do in any other part of the country. So therefore, when I talk of a minority, I'm not talking of a Muslim minority. I'm talking about myself as a minority in a Sikh-dominated state of Punjab. So therefore,
I hope this is publicized in Punjab.
well, please do, because my mother is a Jat Sikh, so therefore I have no difficulty with that. But all I'm trying to say is, you see, when I speak about driving the minority into a certain corner, It is not scaremongering, or it is not rumor mongering, or it is not like to pander to any fears. The fact is that there is a certain minority character in a majority dominated ethos. And till the time in a secular state or in a pluralistic state, you do not take special care of the little interests, you really do not evolve and develop as a country.
You started this minority
No,
conversation.
I again have a problem with this special care, because unless you start defining words like special care, they are concerned, they are worried, that just opens up the whole opportunity to pander. In my opinion, we are a secular nation. We are a nation with a constitution, and majority, minority, whichever religion, the rule of law and functioning institutions are the best protection for all Indians. Whether the Indian is a Muslim, whether the Indian is a Christian, the Indian is a Hindu. Now, your topic in this conversation is, why have we moved to the right?
Yeah.
So I think leave that issue of concerns and fears aside, because that is an issue of people and institutions of the government functioning to protect all citizens equally. But the real reason for the rise of the right, or the rise of the right discourse, is that people are fed up with this decade-old left liberal, and I'm not saying left liberal to knock the left, but left liberal, humanitarian-driven conversation that excludes a large part of India and the US and the Britain out of a conversation. We can't all be constantly spending our lives worrying about somebody. We have to worry about the nation. National identity is an important issue. And yes, within the national identity discourse, we should also ensure that there is room for those who believe that they are not in the majority. And I'll just make one last point. On the national anthem is an example. For all of the hue and cry in Delhi about the Supreme Court order on the national anthem, in an audience of, let's say, 400 people watching a movie, 2 people will say, we will not stand up. But the other 398 will stand up willingly, proudly. But do you say that the other 398 people should not have the right or the pleasure or the satisfaction of having the national anthem just because 2 people are...
Majority wins, that is right.
No, before you respond.
No, on an issue of national identity.
Okay.
First of all, minority is not defined in the Constitution.
Correct.
It is only a constitutional bench. Yeah. Second, here the Hindu grievance comes out very clearly. We have minorities in Karnataka, Maharashtra, etc. But the moment you go to Jammu Kashmir, the Hindus are not a minority. They are not given any status of a minority.
Not given status.
In Punjab, it's a linguistic minority. But Sikhs came out of
demographic minority also. It's a demographic minority also.
I mean, it's all right, but it's a linguistic minority. And it was never there. The Sikhs were founded to save the Hindus, and Guru Tegh Bahadur and Gobind Singh, in fact, what they did was how we are still Hindus. So I think that's not a serious problem. The real problem is that, and Christians are so small, it's not a serious problem. The Islamic invasion of India is a memory etched now in the majority. It's a continuing civilization. Even the UNESCO accepts that we are a continuing civilization. So where the issue comes is where the Muslims are specially targeted, and they, in this modern context of international Islamic terrorism, is a problem. And therefore the Muslims have to make a special effort to say we are also part of India, not as a holder of passport, but that we are from this country. Okay. We are not descendants of
quickly,
that ends the conversation.
Quickly, on the national anthem, I entirely agree with what Rajeev says. See, the national anthem is a secular national identity. And I don't think any Indian should have a problem with that, irrespective of what his caste, community, religion is. So therefore, those, I think, who have a problem with the national anthem are really swinging from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Well, on that note, when we have everybody agree, we're going to call it an end. Thank you for watching this show. We'll see you again, same time next week.